Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. Actually, good afternoon. It's just gone 12 midday here in the UK. So good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Cover everybody. All right, so we've got a lot to cover today because I want to give some updates. Caleb Harris, the young man from Corpus Christi in Texas, his autopsy report has been released, or at least the findings have. I can't find the full autopsy report. I don't think that's out. But newspapers and articles are talking about Caleb today. So I want to do that. I also want to talk about a missing young woman, 15 years old, missing teenager, called Angel Turner from West Virginia, which is a very worrying case, very worrying. And then I want to cover Sebastian Rogers, and Sebastian's dad, Seth, has done an interview with Vinnie Politan from Court TV. So if you saw my video yesterday, I got it in my head that Seth had done an interview with News Nation. I don't know why I got that in my head, but plenty of people corrected me and said, no, it's Court TV that he's done the interview with. And indeed it was. You were right. It was Court TV. Now, I can't find it on Court TV's YouTube channel, but it's on courttv.com. So it's on their website. So we're going to be playing it from there. It would be easier to do it off YouTube, but it doesn't appear to. I can't find it. If it's on Court TV's YouTube channel, I can't find it. Maybe they'll put it up later. I don't know. So I'll be playing that from courttv.com. But hello, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well. Hello, hello. And Krista, thank you so much. Hopping in before the live even starts with a cool 1999. So thank you so much for that. You are very kind. You are too kind, in fact. Yeah, a little bit. People have said that. A little bit like the Harley Dilly case. A little bit, potentially. A lot of people have said the same, though. But it remains to be seen. It remains to be seen. Purple AJ hopping in there with 10 gifted memberships. We've got practically a green house. Practically green. Denim, Jay, PJ Vision, Jessica, Karen, Casper, Melissa, Susan, down the rabbit hole, and K Crime. Welcome, welcome, everybody. And Purple AJ, you are an absolute superstar. I have got no words. But welcome, you 10. You get a month's free membership, courtesy of Purple AJ. There's a bunch of stuff in the members area. If you want to go and check that out, check it all out. There's some short videos, there's some bloopers, there's status updates, there's cute puppy pictures, and there's some members' lives on there as well. So you're all well. I'm not going to say hello to everybody. I'm going to jump straight in because we do have a lot to get through. A lot to get through. Okay, we're going to start with Caleb. Then we're going to do Angel. And then we're going to get into Sebastian. I'm leaving Sebastian till the last because that's going to be the longest. So we'll start with Caleb. And this is People. The People magazine, who've done, I think, probably the best write-up of this. But if you've been following Caleb's case, you will know that he was last seen on March the 4th, the early hours of March the 4th, near his it was like an apartment complex that belonged to the university, and they got a new dog. Him and his roommates had got a new dog. They were seen out on camera in the early morning hours with this dog in the parking lot. Whoa, thank you so much, Nanny of 10, for the $50 Australian. Thank you so much. Incredibly generous. Thank you, thank you. And then roommate went to bed. Caleb was preparing for a fishing trip. He ordered Uber Eats for his lunch the following day. He went out again with the dog, but the dog, he must have taken the dog back to the apartment because the dog has never been missing. And then he sent this Snapchat of a bridge, and that's the last anybody ever heard of him. And this is on Ennis Jocelyn Road, very close, the bridge very close to his apartment complex. The Uber Eats arrived just before 3 a.m. and the roommates were alerted to the fact that something was wrong because they found the Uber Eats the following morning on the doorstep. So the Uber Eats driver was cleared. She did other deliveries and there was nothing untoward. But Caleb had just vanished, completely vanished. That is until June 25th, when horrendously human remains. Now, we don't know whether it was like a full body. I don't know, but it was human remains in a 40-foot deep well, and it was part of like this pump house. Again, very, very close to the apartment complex. So close to the apartment, you could actually see the apartment from the pump house area. And the remains were tested. And it was Caleb. It was Caleb. July 17th, the Corpus Christi Police Department revealed that after the DNA analysis had been completed, it was determined remains most likely belonged to Caleb. They compared the DNA from the human remains with the DNA from Caleb's parents. So they did that match. And the autopsy, been long awaited, but what we're hearing is that the cause of death is unknown, cannot be determined with certainty. And therefore the manner of death, so how he died is the cause of death. So cause of death might be strangulation, it might be a gunshot wound, it might be natural causes, so you might have had a heart attack, blah, blah, blah. But the manner of death is why you died. So that could be homicide, suicide, accident, natural causes. But they can't determine that either. So the whole thing, the whole autopsy, has given no answers whatsoever, simply because the body, and again, I don't even know whether it was a full body. It was in the sewer system. So maybe it's just horrible to think about, but maybe parts have, come away and whatever. And this was skeletonized remains. It was so decomposed that they have not been able to determine manner of death or the cause of death. So in the autopsy report, which was obtained by People, authorities said that at the time his remains were found, they were already in an advanced state of decomposition and skeletonization. And this is quoting from the autopsy report. Again, I haven't seen the full autopsy report. I don't know whether that will be released, whether they'll hold that back. I don't know. But the People magazine have got it. So this is quoting from the autopsy report. While no significant traumatic injuries are identified, the condition of the remains could have obscured subtle injuries and/or additional significant natural disease. The medical examiner noting that his toxicology analysis came back negative. So he wasn't, he wasn't on drugs. Like, there's been loads of speculation. Was he on drugs? Was he just out of his mind? They had been consuming alcohol earlier in the evening. So I don't know whether they found like some alcohol in his system, but toxicology reporting here is negative. The exact details leading up to the terminal event and death are currently unclear. Hence, the cause and manner of death are classified as undetermined at this time. If additional information becomes available in the future, the cause and manner of death can be amended if needed. So his poor family, you know, they waited from March the 4th until July to find out, well, that Caleb was deceased and where his remains were found. And, you know, desperate. I'm sure they were absolutely desperate to get the autopsy results. So it's not surprising. It doesn't surprise me that the cause and manner are undetermined. You know, when you've got a skeleton, then, you know, any soft tissue injuries that might have given, you know, rise to something relatively certain, you know, like lots of bruising, you know, signs of a beating, that type of thing. You could say, well, that leads us in the direction of homicide. But unless the bones show, let's say, you know, breakages that are consistent with, let's say, blunt force trauma, or like the bones have got some evidence of, you know, a gunshot wound, then how can they tell? And are they ever going to know? Are they ever going to know? And I don't think they are, based on the autopsy. I think they'll, you know, I guess if a police investigation leads them to, I don't know, certain suspects, but we're not seeing that at the moment. If he fell in, that's criminal negligence for leaving the manhole cover open. Yeah, I mean, he literally could have fallen down an open manhole. And I think some of them, the manholes in that area, you know, they are big enough for someone to fall down. And if you're just kind of walking along, why he was out there, though, I've no idea. Like, we may also never know why he went out. Why did he go out? Maybe to take the dog to potty. Took the dog back. So why did he go out again? What was that final Snapchat all about? You know, there's some intriguing questions there. Thank you, Devil Doll. You are so kind for gifting 5 memberships. So we've got Elizabeth, Spunky One, Dragonfly, Pretty in Pink, and Boffy Girl. Thank you, thank you. You are so generous, Devil Doll. And you guys get a month's free membership, courtesy of Devil Doll. It was really foggy, yeah. It was really foggy. Now, there's been lots of speculation as to whether he was going out meeting someone, you know, for, I don't know, a clandestine encounter. There's been some speculation that there are Reddit posts. Now, I haven't seen them personally, but other YouTubers reported. I think Grey Hughes has been on this. I've seen a couple of Grey Hughes' streams on this about Caleb was on Reddit shortly before he went out. It was kind of like a, you know, a hookup subreddit. I don't know any of the accuracy of that, though. I don't know whether the police are using that as part of their investigation. It makes sense, but there's these questions. Why did he go out? Why did he go out again in the, you know, the middle of the night? Did he just go for a walk, or was he going meeting someone? Did that meetup happen, like, you know, consensually, and he was on his way back? We don't know. you know, even if he was going meeting someone, it doesn't mean to say that they murdered him. He could have gone for a hookup. Everything went fine. The person left, and we may even find out at some point that the police have found who that person was, and they've been cleared. We don't know. We don't know whether this case will ever have an answer. Yeah, I mean, look, yeah, it's not, Linda. It's not unusual for people to go walking at night. It's really not. But what we don't know is whether that was Caleb's, you know, something that he did. Did he enjoy walking at night? Is that something that he did? If so, then it's part of his normal routine. Then you could assume that it's a tragic accident. He fell down an open manhole. So yeah, there is negligence there. So accidentally falling down an open manhole, well, you know, manhole covers should not be open, should they? But to prove criminal negligence, you know, it's difficult. It's very difficult. Spunky one, he wasn't on drugs. The toxicology report came back negative. So he wasn't on drugs. Now, I don't know whether there was alcohol in his blood system, and if so, they may not even be able to tell, honestly, because on skeletonized remains, it's possible to get toxicology, but it's not as accurate. So again, because the body is skeletonized, you've not got blood, you've not got liver tissue where they can take tox from. So it's just one big question mark. One big question mark. Enjoy gardening at night when the sun's not beating down. Yeah, I was out messing with my plants about 1 a.m. this morning. I was moving plant pots around and stuff. Did you hear about the protest in Warrington? Yes, I did. There's been protests all over the UK. But it's peaceful. So the majority were peaceful, like the counter-protesters. All right, let's move on to Angel Turner. Now, this is just a few days old. Angel is 15, and she's gone missing from her dad's home in West Virginia. So this is the Aware Foundation's poster on her, and her mother has given some interviews. So 15 years old, she was staying at her dad's in Berkeley Springs, which is in West Virginia, Fairview Drive. So I'm going to get the map up in a second. And basically, when her dad got up in the morning, Angel wasn't there. And she hasn't been seen since. So this was August the 2nd. So she was last seen on August the 2nd, presumably by her dad. Last seen wearing a white t-shirt, black shorts, and white sneakers. So, of course, we don't know what she was wearing. That's just what her dad last saw her wearing. So we don't even know whether she was wearing those things when she left the house. So this is Morgan County, Berkeley Springs, West Virginia. Angel is 15 years old. She's got dirty blonde hair, brown eyes. She's 5'1", and she weighs 260 pounds. So if you've got any information about her, have you seen her in that area? Again, I'm going to get the map up in a second. But if you've got any information, please call the Morgan County, West Virginia Sheriff's Department on 304-258-0305. So there is a Facebook group. which has got 3.2k members. I joined it today. It is a public group, so I'm all right sharing this. When it's a private group, I don't feel comfortable sharing, but this is a public group. Anyone can see this group, so you don't have to be a member to see it. So generally speaking, again, I only joined this morning, but it's not gone crazy. I don't think that many people know about this case. So her mother is doing interviews. She's done an interview with a podcaster. She's done interviews with, the media. I'm going to share one in a second. And I've seen Sleuth Mom and Liplock No More both do live streams on Angel. But the case isn't very well known. So her mother is desperate to get more awareness for Angel's case. Again, she wasn't at her mother's residence. Her mother and father are split. So Angel was staying with her dad. So there's no question at all at the moment that any family members are involved. So it appears that this Facebook group is, it's not gone mad with conspiracy theories and so on. There's some genuine questions being asked here. Like, why has there been no press conferences? It seems that West Virginia aren't great at publicising missing persons cases. But why no press conference? Why? So her mother is in this group. She did put on earlier that she's taking a break because she's just so overwhelmed. This is her mother, Carrie. I'm getting a bit overwhelmed. I need to take a bit of a breath. I trust to leave this page in the hands of her moderators. But she has been posting in this group. And like I said, she has been vocal in the media. She's just desperate to get more information out there. And in the absence of the cops saying anything, Carrie has taken it upon herself to, be the voice and give any details that she's able to share. Of course, the cops should be doing this with press conferences. But this is what Carrie said 10 hours ago. I cannot believe I have to say this again. If the information does not come from me, do not believe it. All of the information that is out there is on podcasts, the news interviews, and other approved forums such as YouTube that I have screened. I do not care who they say they are. Do not believe them. And if this continues, I will stop communicating with the ones I know are causing the issues. So there are some issues bubbling. Under the surface. This is about finding Angel, not someone getting there 5 seconds to say they were involved. This is so exhausting. So she's trying hard to get the information out, but as happens, there's people who are just trolls, people who sabotage. I'm not seeing it yet in this group, but like I said, it is a case that isn't very well known. So I'm going to read this article here. This is from Metro News, the voice of West Virginia. Mother of missing Morgan County teenager believes her daughter was abducted. Now, there is some, again, it's only what is coming from the family because the police aren't talking at all. But there is some indication that there were a couple of strange vehicles in the area of Fairview Drive, where her dad's house was. So vehicles that seem to just be parked up suspiciously in the hours before Angel went missing. So I can understand why Angel's mother, Carrie, is thinking that Angel has been abducted. So this concerns me. It's a very rural area. Berkeley Springs is tiny. There's only like a few houses there. This is Fairview Drive. I don't know which house it is, but at this stage, I'm not going to, even if I knew, I'm not going to point right to it until we know more. But I genuinely don't know which house it is. So very rural. These properties seem to be, you know, quite spread out. There's lots of woodland in the vicinity. If we take, you know, do this, it's hilly. It's not mountainous, but it's somewhat hilly. I mean, Fairview Drive is flat, but hills up here. But what really concerns me, and I say this every single time I come upon a case like this, it's so close to the state line. So this is West Virginia. However, it's very, very close to the Maryland state line and also to Pennsylvania as well. So Pennsylvania is just up here. So here's Fairview Drive. Here's Maryland. There's the state line for Maryland. But then you've got Pennsylvania pops in. So in trafficking scenarios, they choose people close to state lines. They absolutely do. Because it's more difficult for information to get out, and they can have a victim across the state line before it's even known they're missing. Now, obviously, you know, there are many cases where states communicate with each other, where alerts go out in cases like this, where it's incredibly close to the state line. You would like to think that an alert would go out in Maryland, also Pennsylvania, but it's not always the case. It's not always the case. It concerned me a lot in the Michael Vaughan case in the early days, because Fruitland, Idaho is right on the Oregon border in the early days, before we knew that there was, you know, suspects, before law enforcement named suspects, and we knew that it was actually monsters just down the road in the neighborhood. But in the first year of Michael's case, before those suspects were announced, it concerned me that this was a trafficking scenario, and you know, Michael could have been taken across the state line within a matter of minutes. But it turns out in Michael's case that wasn't the case. But it always concerns me where you've got somebody where there's fears that they've been abducted, and it is incredibly close here to Maryland and to Pennsylvania. We don't know if she's run away. This is the thing. This is the thing. We don't know. Now, this is what her mother's saying. And also, if she'd run away, she's not taken anything. So she's not taken her phone. She's not taken her medication. She's got, I think, a thyroid disorder, and she's pre-diabetic, and she hasn't taken her medication. So if she'd run away, why wouldn't she have taken her medication? Now, there's perhaps she might not take her phone, realizing that it could be tracked. That's possible. I don't think any clothes were missing. So a runaway scenario, she's not taken anything, even her medication. So I'm going to read this. This is one of the local newspapers who's got a reasonable write-up. So the mother of a missing Berkeley Springs teenager says 15-year-old Angel Turner left her phone, her dog. Now, she left her dog behind. Now, the dog was actually outside. When her dad got up in the morning, the dog was outside. Now, the dog's not normally outside at night. It's not like an outdoor dog that stays outside. You know, Angel loved this dog, and this dog was outside. So it makes me feel like she maybe took the dog out and someone abducted her and the dog came home. Or she maybe went out to meet someone and took the dog, and then they took her and the dog was left behind, and then the dog went home. That's what it makes me feel like. I don't know what breed of dog, by the way. So she left her phone, her dog, and her medication behind when she disappeared. And I would think if she was running away, she'd take her dog. I think she'd take her medication and her dog, not necessarily her phone. So she disappeared sometime in the early morning hours of Saturday. That would be August the 2nd. Or would that be August the 3rd? Hold on, let me just get my calendar up. Right, so that would be August the 3rd. So she was last seen on August the 2nd, that's the Friday, by her dad. And then her dad went to bed, got up for the following morning, and Angel's not there, and the dog's outside. And the medication that she needs, if she doesn't have it, it is potentially life-threatening. It's a thyroid disorder. I don't know what type. I don't know whether she's hypothyroid or hyperthyroid or whatever, but if you're hypothyroid, you need thyroxine. And you'll die if you don't have it. She's also pre-diabetic. Now, I don't know whether she takes daily medication, because sometimes pre-diabetes can be treated by things like diet and, lifestyle changes and stuff like that. Some pre-diabetics just have a tablet rather than injections. Like my granddad was diabetic, and he controlled his with diet and a tablet. He didn't have injections. It was only in the last few weeks of his life that he needed injections. So he controlled his diabetes very well. He just said, like, I don't know how many tablets a day he took. I think he took a tablet before meals. I can't remember now. It's a long time ago. Anyway, her dad made the discovery in the Fairview Drive area of Berkeley Springs. The gate that keeps her dog out of her bedroom was out of place, and the dog didn't come out to meet him. Angel's mom, Carrie Michaels, said he went looking for her, couldn't find her, and noticed the dog was outside. She left her watch behind, which is her phone, and her medications. Michaels, who said her daughter is pre-diabetic, said neighbours reported seeing 2 separate vehicles around the property Thursday of last week. So this would have been less than 2 days before she disappeared. And with it being such a rural place, like neighbours know everyone else's vehicles. Like, strange vehicles stick out when it's very, very rural. Like, if you're in a town or a city, you're never going to be able to really know if it's a strange vehicle that's looking to abduct a teenager, because there's probably loads of vehicles all over everywhere, and people visiting and people whatever, working and whatever. So a neighbour reported this. Now, obviously, this is just a report from a neighbour being reported to the family, and now her mother's reporting it. Now, this wasn't her mother's residence. This is her dad's residence. So it's like third-hand information. But that's all we've got. And this is the reason why Carrie believes that Angel has been abducted. That there's these strange vehicles and the dog is outside when the dog's never outside. So what's happened? Something's happened there. K9 units were deployed to the property, and since Saturday morning, a missing poster has been circulated thousands of times online. There's also a Facebook page, Help Find Angel Turner, which I've just showed you. Michael said she's nowhere to track her daughter. We have no information other than what's been given to us by neighbours. This is insane. This is insane. Is she taking thyroxine? I don't know what type of thyroid disorder she's got. So I don't know. Has the dad spoke? No. and he doesn't have social media. So it's Carrie who's being like the voice for the family. I haven't seen her dad give any interviews as of yet, but it is very early in the case. Like sometimes parents don't want to speak, family members don't want to speak because they're just in complete shock. So they'll have one spokesperson in the family. Maybe he'll speak in due course if she, remains missing. We don't know. So I just find it insane that all the information, not just that we're getting as the public, we look, the cops are not obliged to tell us anything, honestly, are they? It's good when cops do press conferences because it gets information out, and at least we get, some facts that we can use to report on. But when the family are only getting information from the neighbours, that worries me. There's been issues with West Virginia before. Can I do a recap on this full case for the new subs to the channel, please, as I'm clueless on it? This is all we have. This is all the information we have. It's a very new case. She only went missing. She was last seen by her dad last Friday, August the 2nd. And her dad got up on the Saturday morning, August the 3rd, and she wasn't there. This is all we have. It's brand new. So a recap isn't necessary. This is the first time I've talked about this case, and this is all the information we have at the moment. So there is no recap. This is it. This is it. All right. So with no information other than what's given to us by neighbours, Berkeley Springs and Morgan County are asking people to check their video cameras to see if there's any information from 11:30 p.m. on Friday until 8:30 a.m. on Saturday. So that's a long time. That's a long time. If a dad saw her at 11:30, let's assume that they're saying from 11:30 because maybe that's the last time her dad saw her, or maybe her dad went to bed at that time and he knew she was in her room. And then maybe 8:30 is when he got up and realised she was missing. So she could have gone any time between 11:30 p.m. on Friday the 2nd to 8:30 a.m. on Saturday the 3rd. That's a long time. Potentially she could have been missing for 8 hours before her dad even knew she was missing. That's a problem. She could have been whisked away somewhere deep in Maryland. She could be somewhere deep in Pennsylvania within 8 hours. Michael said she believes someone groomed her daughter. Michael said she and Angel's dad had taken steps to limit the ways Angel could be online. So presumably, we have to guess, but presumably they're limiting her online access, perhaps because they know she's talking to people online. And that would be perfectly normal for a teenager to be online, to talk to friends and whatever. That's fine. She's 15 years old. But there's lots of 15-year-olds who engage in potentially dangerous behaviours, talking to people online who they think they're making new friends, and they are predators. We don't know whether that's been the case with Sebastian's case. That could easily be the case with Sebastian's case as well. A 15-year-old, originally we're told that he didn't have online access at all, and then it came out that he does, at least he does at his dad's. But in this instance, her mother's been upfront by saying, well, we've tried to limit what she does online. Investigators looking at any devices they know Angel might have had access to. So cops have got her tech, so maybe they'll find some answers. But what if she had a burner phone? Maybe she left her phone at home because she's got a burner phone. We just don't know. There's not very much information out there therefore it's all these questions we can only speculate on. Angel does not have a history of running away. She's a homebody like her mama. In my mind, in my heart, and in my soul, this is an abduction. And I would be inclined to agree that just based on the small number of facts we have at the moment, abduction would seem the most likely outcome at this moment in time. That could change because we've only got a very small amount to work with. Her mom said they don't know which direction Angel was taken, pointing out the proximity of Interstate 70 and 68, as well as Route 522 near Berkeley Springs. So, white female, she's got blonde hair, like dirty, dark blonde hair, brown eyes, 5'1", 260 pounds. Last reported wearing a white t-shirt, black shorts and white sneakers. So we don't know whether she was still wearing those things when she went or that's just what her dad last saw her in. Anyone with information is asked to contact Morgan County Sheriff's Office at 304-258-0305. So that's Angel Turner, 15 years old. Just 15. What's that? Is that a chinchilla or a rabbit with like uber short ears? Not sure what that is. But it's concerning. It's 5 days now. Yeah. She could have voluntarily left. Yeah. Yeah. She could be she could be safe somewhere. She could have had, some kind of, relationship that her parents didn't know about, and she's run off with them. But why not take her medication? She would surely know at 15, surely she would know that she would need her medication. That concerns me. And if she was running off with someone like it was planned, why wouldn't she take her medication and her dog? It leads me to believe that she intended to come back. But again, we've got a small amount of information. It's scary she had the dog out though and no phone. Well, it could well be that she was just taking the dog out. Like, I don't know, maybe she, she was going to go to bed and she just takes the dog out for the last time and she gets nabbed. And the dog's left behind. Or she went out to meet someone, like a planned meeting, rather than just like taking the dog out and then gets nabbed by some random. Like, she went to meet someone, the dog came with her, the dog was just running alongside her, and she got into a car, they drove away, the dog's left there, and the dog just goes home. So that's why the dog's waiting outside. Thought there was a mum interview on camera. There's been an interview on a podcast, but I haven't seen an on-camera interview. If there is an on-camera interview, I haven't seen it. But there is an interview on a podcast. Now, I heard it on Sleuth Mom's channel, but I don't know if they've got a link to it here. I think this could be it. Yeah, this is it. So it's on a podcast. So the link to it's there. So, Naked Truth, two chicks on a mic. Carrie Michaels interview missing 15-year-old Angel Turner. She's missing from Berkeley Springs, West Virginia. So 43-minute interview. Like I said, I heard it on Sleuth Mom's channel. Sleuth Mom played it. But I'll put a link to this in the chat. if you want to go and listen to that now, you can do. Or save it for later. So that will take you to Spotify, but I'm sure that they also have it on other providers. I listen to podcasts on Apple, but it's just because it's on my phone. And it was a very detailed interview, so go and listen to that. But basically, that is all we know. Basically, that is all we know at this moment. So this is Angel, 15, 5'1", 260 pounds, blonde hair, so it looks quite long, brown eyes, white female, last seen at her dad's house in Fairview Drive. Where's my map? Where's my map gone? I've lost my map. There it is. Fairview Drive, which is very, very rural. Houses. I mean, there are quite a few properties, but they're quite spaced out. Lots of woodland. Perfect place for an abduction because there's not many eyes. There's probably traffic cameras, but maybe not directly outside the house. People might have cameras, but because the properties are set away from the road, they might not pick up stuff. I don't know whether her dad had cameras at his place. I don't know the answer to that. But it's very close to the Maryland border, just there. And then Pennsylvania pops up here. So you've got West Virginia, Maryland, and then Pennsylvania pops up right there. So she could be across state lines. She could have been gone 8 hours by the time her dad even realised she was gone. I don't know. Can I do Street View? Yes, I can. I don't know whether the dogs, like the cops were called and the cops had dogs out. So what's this road called? There's Fairview. So this is Fairview Drive. So look. So the houses, unless like a ring doorbell, if a house has a ring doorbell, it's not gonna catch a car. Now, a more advanced security system might. So the cops are asking people to check their, cameras, dash cam, house cameras, that kind of thing. But, these properties are very spaced out. Big lots. Can't go down there. It must be a private drive. So there's probably not going to be traffic camera, maybe until you get to the main road. But like I said, I don't know which house it is. And at this early stage, I probably wouldn't even publicise which house it is, even if I knew. But I don't know which house it is that she disappeared from. I just know it's Fairview Drive. So, yeah, very rural. Nice houses. Nice houses. But very rural. Yeah, lovely place, yeah. Yeah, it's the kind of place I'd live. Not many traffic cameras in West Virginia. Internet is spotty in the entire state. Oh, really? I think the only other case I've had interest in West Virginia was Bryn Hargreaves. the man who went missing in January 2022. Unusual circumstances, like left his shower running, weird, left his door open. 14 months later, his body was found 350 yards away from his front door. So that's insane that all the search parties, the dogs, everything missed him. Everything missed him. Down like a small ravine in the woods, but literally a few hundred yards away from his door. Insane. That was West Virginia. And the family had private investigators because they were getting absolutely no joy whatsoever from the cops. They had a terrible time with the cops. But this was a grown man, right? But this is a minor. This is a young woman who is only 15. So even if Angel has gone off with someone consentingly, it's still a crime because she's a minor. So whoever has taken her and whoever he is, with her right now is committing a crime, especially if they're having a sexual relationship with her. They're definitely committing a crime. Definitely. So, yeah, so that's Angel. That's all we know. All we know at this moment in time. I've literally told you everything I know. But that podcast is worth a listen. I heard it on Sleuth Mom's channel. She did some commentary on it. But I don't think there's an on-camera interview. If there is, let me know. If somebody can let me know in the chat, because we can listen to it if there is an on-camera interview. But, all right, let's move over now to Sebastian's case. Sebastian Rogers. So, I'm going to have to reshare my audio, I think, because it's told me my audio's gone. Let me just All right, just a second. I hate sharing videos on websites. Right, let me know if you can hear this, just as a check. Yeah, you can hear me, but it's the audio from the news piece I need you to listen to. Yeah, human trafficking is at an all-time high. Absolutely, yeah. Because it's so easy to groom these kids online. So easy. All right, let me know you can hear this. Can you hear that? Did you hear Vinnie Politan's voice? No. All right. Okay, I thought that might be the case because... All right, let me know you can hear this. Let me know you can hear this now.
His name is Sebastian Rogers. He's a child with autism, and he is missing. Now, there are a lot of questions that need to be answered in this case. Here's more of Sebastian's story.
Right, good. Right, so this is... Oh, what's happened now? Hold on. Press the wrong button. Sorry, guys. Okay. All right. So we're not going to play the whole thing. I'm going to start about 11 minutes in. So this is an interview with Seth, who is Sebastian's biological dad. TikTok Tony Mathis, who is, I don't even know what he is, spokesperson, just sits there. I don't even know. I don't even know what he is. We're not going to play the whole interview. The link to this is in the description box if you've not heard the whole thing. But we're going to start about 11 minutes in, and we're going to listen to the end of the interview, and then Vinnie has some guests on. So we're going to listen to a little bit of that as well. TikTok Tony's a mannequin in this interview. I know. Why is he there? Is it just to like stop Seth saying something stupid, or what? Looks like he's half asleep. Yeah, he looks bored. Like these interviews that he sits in on, he just looks bored. I think it's probably to like text Seth if he's saying stuff that is not appropriate. Because look, Seth has said some stuff that shouldn't have been said. Let's be clear. You know, in the many interviews that Seth has done with social media people and even the news, he said some stuff that should not have been said. So maybe Tony's there just to warn him, like to, you know, just to cut him off if he's going to say something that he shouldn't be saying. But yeah, definitely for his own gain. Yeah, he wants to get his foot in to the true crime world. Like he tried with the Idaho 4 case to get his foot in the door. And then he definitely tried with Caleb Harris, like he was the spokesperson for Caleb's family. And then he wasn't. So maybe they saw what antics he was getting up to in Sebastian's case. So for those who need a quick reminder, oh, I've not got my Amber Alert up here. Just let me get my Amber Alert up. I thought I got my Amber Alert up and I didn't, but here it is. All right. So for those who need a quick reminder, this is Sebastian, 15 years old, white male, brown hair, brown eyes, 5'5", and 120 pounds, and he has been missing since February 26th. February 26th. So a long time, you know, over 5 months now. So he disappeared from his home on Stafford Court in Hendersonville, which is in Tennessee. It's close to Nashville, only a few miles from Nashville. And his mother saw him on the evening of the 25th, which was the Sunday. She last saw him wearing black sweatpants with a white Adidas style stripe, a black sweatshirt with a motif on it, although she's not sure what the motif was. It could be Minecraft or something like that. And glasses. He always wears his glasses. He's autistic, and that could impair his ability to return home without assistance. And of course, if you've got any information whatsoever, credible information, not just what you heard from a psychic, then you can call that in to Sumner County Emergency Communications Centre at 615-451-3838, or the TBI, Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, on 1-800-TBI-FIND. And the 1-800-TBI-FIND has been scrolling across the bottom of the screen whilst this live has been running. All right, so that's just a quick reminder. So we're going to get straight into this interview. So Seth is Sebastian's bio dad. Sebastian was due to go and live with Seth once the school year was over, once, you know, they broke for summer, which would have been like May. And Sebastian didn't want to go because he enjoyed going to school in Hendersonville, and Seth had got him into some kind of online program, so he was going to be doing online school, and he didn't want to go. So that's that came out as, you know, as the months progressed. But Sebastian was living with Katie, his mother, and her husband, so Sebastian's stepdad, Chris and Katie Proudfoot. So lots have been said about Chris and Katie. Lots of people blame them. Lots of people think they did something to Sebastian. Chris was away working 3 hours away, and that has been confirmed by the PIs before Seth fired them. Seth also was at work on camera, allegedly. He works about 35 minutes away from Stafford Court as a corrections officer. So he was doing a night shift. He was on camera all night. All right, so that's the background. So I'm going to play this from 10, nearly 11 minutes in. We're going to play the rest of this interview. I'm going to comment on it. So this is courttv.com, and this is Vinnie Politan investigates. So the audio for both Seth and Tony isn't great, especially Tony. Can I put CCs on? Yes, I can. I can. All right, so I think CCs are on, especially Tony. Is that on? Let's see. All right, so we're starting here, and Seth is telling Vinnie that he's not getting any information from the cops. So that's where we're going to start. I wish I could speed this up a little bit because Seth talks so slow. And when I listened to this on my phone, and I was able to speed it up, but it doesn't seem to give me an option to speed it up any on the computer. I don't know why. So it's just so slow. But we're going to have to just deal, all right? You have to just deal. And some of you don't like me speeding stuff up, so maybe you'll think that's a good thing. But anyway, I'm going to comment throughout. No audio. Oh, it's done it again. Oh, I am honestly, I am so sick of StreamYard. So sick of it. Like, the audio just drops for absolutely no reason whatsoever. Right, we'll try again. So we'll take it back a little bit. So Seth is saying that he's not got any information. He's not got very much information from the cops. All right, let's do another sound check. I literally just did a sound check. I literally just did one. But let's do another one. Where am I at? Here we go.
The last thing that I was really informed of by the sheriff's office is they don't have anything stating that he left the house.
Right, can you hear that? Yeah, good. Right, let's hope that StreamYard doesn't just keep dropping the audio, or else it's going to drive me insane. But let's just hope. Okay.
And that's pretty much, you know, that's it. But obviously he's not there, or else we wouldn't be looking for him. You know, there's no sightings. There's nothing. Just won't move. Things just don't make sense. I mean, we're talking about, first of all, we're talking about a male child that left his house with nothing. a teenager that left the house with nothing. No phone, no switch, possibly no shoes, no backpack. I mean, completely unprepared. That's
no money.
It's not how he leaves the house to go somewhere with me. I don't.
Yeah, but only because Seth reminds him. Like we've heard from Seth's own mouth, that he has to remind Sebastian to take his phone. Like he drums it into him that you must take your phone when you go out. But that doesn't mean to say that Sebastian will remember those things when he's not at his dad's. Maybe maybe he remembers more times than he doesn't at his dad's, but it doesn't mean to say that he's necessarily going to take his phone or prepare himself if he's running away. Now, my personal view is that he didn't intend to run away, like forever. So he didn't need to take anything. That's just my personal view. That he's gone for a walk, maybe feeling overwhelmed, maybe feeling upset about something, maybe because he's an insomniac. We've heard from Katie that Sebastian is up in the night, like getting snacks and things. So maybe he goes out, and I think something untoward happened to him while he was out. But I don't think he meant to run away forever. That's just my personal view, though. And I've said that loads, but could be wrong. I could be way off the mark. However, that's been my number one theory for most of the case.
I don't expect him to leave anywhere without his phone and way of communication in case something happens. It's just too much doesn't make sense.
It doesn't. Seth?
It kind of doesn't. It doesn't. It might feel that it doesn't make sense, but I think there are explanations that do make sense. Girl next door, the young man in Alabama left his phone on purpose. Yeah, well, you said young people these days, they know that if they take the phone, they are going to be trackable. So if they don't want to be tracked, they don't take the phone. But I don't think that was Sebastian, personally. But it could be. It could be that Sebastian had been groomed by someone. Now, this is on my list, high up there on my list. It could well be that he was groomed by someone who told him to leave his phone behind. You know, saying, oh, I'll buy you a new phone, I'll buy you a Switch, and blah, blah, blah. Could well be. That could well be the case. So he's been found now, but also has autism. His parents were pepper sprayed. What? Pepper sprayed by who? I don't know the case. I don't know which case we're talking about here. My own 13-year-old who is glued to their phone has forgotten their phone before. It does happen. Yeah. Of course. Anybody can forget their phone. Did I look at your other theory? Don't think so. Autistic children leave their home with no phone, no shoes all the time. Seen it 3 or 4 times since Sebastian went missing. And it's not just autistic children. It could be if you're going for a walk, you don't necessarily take anything with you. You just go for a walk. Or you could forget it, like people, like kids with ADHD might forget it. Like just absent-minded, impulsive, just decides to go out, doesn't take anything. So I don't think that's unusual, honestly. I really don't. Theory is in the comment on my channel. Well, I'll go and look later, but I haven't seen it.
Seth Rogers, Tony Mathis, stand by, stay with us. When we come back, we have another question to ask tonight. Was Sebastian's mom the last person to see him?
We were just trying.
I'm loving Vinnie's dramatic music, by the way.
to do whatever we can to advance the investigation. It has not gone to a place where anybody has forgotten about him or is not pursuing this. The parents have been cooperative throughout at the beginning of the investigation. They have pretty much done whatever law enforcement has asked of them.
That's TBI talking about the case of missing 15-year-old Sebastian Rogers. So,
whoa, just happened. He was lured out and some people shoved him in a car. Parents saw what was happening, heard a noise and tried to stop them. They abducted, pepper sprayed the parents. Found safe. Man. Wow. No, I'd not heard of that one, but it just happened. That is scary. So that's Alabama. Scary. That's what we don't know. Was Katie truly the last person to see him? Yeah, absolutely we don't know. Because if he had been groomed and he'd gone out to meet someone, then obviously Katie's not the last person to see him. So the last person that we're aware that saw him. But that was the night before. That was when he went to bed. So let's see what Seth has to say about it.
parents are cooperating. Now, his situation, his parents aren't together anymore. So his mom, he has a stepfather, and he has a dad, and they're all in the same area when all of this was happening, the same general area. But I want to play you something, which was an interview that was done with Sebastian's mother, Katie Proudfoot. Her and her husband sat down with the YouTube channel Chronicles of Olivia, and she explained the last time that she saw Sebastian.
He said, all right, good night, Mama. Good night, puppies. Love you. And went to bed. He was doing something in his room because about an hour later I heard some noise and I was like, I don't care what you're doing in there, but go to sleep. And about midnight I got up and I went to bed. And 6 o'clock I went to wake him up for school Monday morning. And that's when he wasn't here.
So Sebastian went to bed. They're in they're in the same house, different parts of the house. She heard a thud noise, but didn't go to see him. But what was going on with that alleged thud noise, and who was with him? Was there anyone with him at that moment? Or, bringing me to my next question, was Sebastian's mother the last person to see him? Was she the last one? Was there someone else that came to the house that night? Or is there some other story? Our guest.
I mean, somebody could have come to the house, but the thud was heard when she was still up. So if the thud was someone coming into the house, how did they get into the house without her seeing them? But it could have been Sebastian tripping over something. Honestly, I don't think there was anyone in the room with Sebastian. That's just my personal view. I can't prove it. The cops did say that there was no disturbances at the windows. Like, the windows have like blinds on them. So if somebody had climbed through the window, I think there would have been some evidence of it, perhaps. But a thud could be him tripping over something. It could be him jumping off his bed. No idea, right? But at 15, I wouldn't have gone in to check it. I would have just shouted for them to be quiet. If they were being raucous or loud, I would have just shouted, go to bed, just be quiet. But I wouldn't have gone in to check them. But it could be anything. And I don't honestly think it's related to his disappearance, other than it tells us he was still awake. That's all it tells us, that he was awake.
Guests are still with us. Seth Rogers, Sebastian's father, and Tony Mathis, the family spokesperson. Seth, from your perspective, I know you've listened to every potential piece of information that's been available in this case, that's been made available. to me, that thud noise, I've always thought about that, what that could have been if it happened, right? What are your thoughts about?
Yeah, he responded. Yeah, he responded appropriately. So it's not like the thud was him falling down, having a seizure, or falling down fainting. Like maybe if you shouted, like if it was a loud thud and you shouted, "You're all right," or "Go to bed," and they didn't respond, then you might want to put your head around the door just to check, especially with someone who has a history of seizures. He'd not had a seizure for a long time, apparently, but still, you might be tempted to put your head around the door just to check. But he responded. So we know he wasn't having a seizure. We know he hadn't fainted because he responded. So I don't think there's anything wrong with what Katie did. I know a lot of people have criticised her for not checking, but even if she had, well, he might still have disappeared because, you know, the thud was when she was still awake and we don't know what time he left. So for that reason, I don't think it's that relevant, honestly. Other than, like I said, we know that he was still awake. But we do know that he didn't sleep very much. We do know, we've heard from Katie and from Seth that, you know, he's not been a great sleeper like his whole life.
Sebastian's mom, do you believe she's the last person to see Sebastian before he disappeared?
I'd say yes. I mean, he was in her house. She's the one that put him to bed. She'd be the last person to have seen him.
What do you think about that thud noise that she described, the rustling that was going on? I thought about it. I've looked at the house. His room is on the first floor, right? So his window is accessible from the outside.
So I think Vinnie's thinking that the thud could be somebody getting in, like Sebastian letting someone in through the window, which could be possible if there was some kind of disturbance at the window. Like there was evidence that someone had climbed through. But there wasn't. There wasn't any evidence that like either he climbed out of the window or that someone had climbed in. But I could see why Vinnie might think, well, the thud could be somebody climbing through and then, you know, basically just like jumping down. Or him going out, yeah. Or him going out. But because there's no disturbance at the window, then that's probably not happened. No, he wasn't on seizure medication. I think it was when he was much younger that he had seizures. I don't think he'd had a seizure for quite a long time.
It would be, I believe, but I know law enforcement went around the house and stated that none of the windows or screens had been tampered with. So
these are the screens that they're talking about. So, you know, how easy is it for them to, how easy would it have been for Sebastian to remove one of those screens and then let someone in and then put it back perfectly? I don't think that's likely, is it? You know, if he'd let someone in, like a friend that he'd let through the window because he knew his mother wouldn't agree with him having a friend in, then to put the screen back perfectly, I can't see a 15-year-old doing that, honestly. I don't know, though. But we absolutely know that nothing was untoward about the windows. We don't even know how the windows open. Like, presumably they do open, but we don't know how far they open. Like, do they open the whole way? Could you lift, you know, a window? Or do they open outwards? You know, it's not relevant, I don't think, because I think there would have been something that denoted either Sebastian going out of the window or someone coming in. Because my first thought, when this all went down, when, you know, he'd gone missing with no one seeing him or whatever, I thought he's gone out of a window. That was my first thought. And then the cops said no, there was no disturbances at the window. So I thought, oh, he's gone out of a door like a like a regular person. He's not climbed out of a window. So I think the windows are out, honestly.
Before,
So as for the thug, I mean, I don't know what she would classify as a thug. If I heard something in his room that would, I know I'd go check on him just because I want to make sure he's okay.
And the other thing is there's plants like under the windows, under the front window, there's plants. Now, that's the photos that he's showing are realtor photos, like from Zillow or something. So I don't really know how big the plants are now, but you know, there's soil and plants. So if somebody had been getting in the window or getting out the window, there may have been, I mean, not necessarily, but may have been evidence there, footprints in that soil, or you know, a plant being crushed or something. But I don't even know why I'm still talking about the windows, because nobody came in or out of a window.
I mean, he's got a medical condition that would definitely mean I need to go check on him just to make sure he's okay.
Seth. Right. Seth. Seth being the holier than thou parent there, saying, oh yeah, I would definitely have gone and checked on him. If I heard a thud, I would definitely have gone and checked on him. Putting the blame on Katie for not checking on him. Even if she had have checked on him, doesn't mean to say that would have meant that it wouldn't have disappeared. Because he disappeared after she'd gone to bed. However, Seth would not have gone to check on him if he heard a thud. Why? Because we know that Seth left Sebastian alone whilst he did 12-hour shifts, almost an hour away. And sometimes those shifts lasted as long as 14 hours. So at the minimum, Sebastian would have been left when Seth was working a minimum of 14 hours, 12-hour shift plus the driving time there and back. Possibly as long as 16 hours if Seth was working a 14-hour shift. So if Sebastian had made thud noises in the house when he was at Seth's, Seth wouldn't have known when he was working. So going on Vinnie Politan's show, holier than thou, saying, oh, I would have checked. What he's omitted to tell Vinnie is that he left Sebastian alone for 14 hours straight when he was working. And he would just ring him when it was time for him to go to bed. He'd ring Sebastian to tell him to go to bed. Well, do you think that Sebastian would have gone, oh, yeah, I will right now? Yeah, of course he would have done. But does it mean he did go to bed when Seth told him to? No. Sebastian could have been out all night. Sebastian could have been going out partying all night. Not that I think he was, but hypothetically he could have been. And Sebastian would have been out and Seth would have been none the wiser. So Seth can't be the holier than thou parent, like the helicopter dad, because we know he wasn't. We absolutely know he wasn't. From Seth's own mouth, we know he wasn't. So I find that very annoying when Seth says things like this. Find it very annoying.
and have you spoken with his mom about that night at all? Have you had any sort of conversation, either just the two of you or with other people there?
Have not had a conversation with her just alone, and probably won't.
Again, what he omits to tell Vinnie is that for the first 3 days when Sebastian was missing, he actually stayed at their house. And the relationship broke down between Katie, Chris, and Seth when Seth's sister did that GoFundMe, because they'd all agreed, the 3 of them had agreed that they weren't going to do GoFundMe, like on advice of the police. And Seth went ahead and did it. So he stayed in their house for 3 days. There was ample time for Seth to get a full explanation of what exactly went down minute by minute from Katie. When the day that Sebastian disappeared, Chris wasn't there for hours. Seth and Katie were together without Chris for the entire morning, because Chris was working 3.5 hours away and he had to wait for cover before he could leave the job site. So he only got back to Hendersonville in the afternoon of the 26th of February. So Seth was first on the scene. Like, Seth would have been there by, I would say, 8:15, 8:30, if not earlier. So he had ample time in those first 3 days to speak to Katie on her own and for her to give him a step-by-step on what happened. So him saying that he's not been able to speak to Katie, maybe he can't speak to her now because, you know, they've clammed up. They're not speaking to him now. Maybe he can't now, but whose fault is that? That's not Katie's fault. And I'm not stepping up for Katie here. Like, people think that I step up for Katie and that I'm at some kind of, like, I don't know, white knight for Katie. I'm not. I say what I see. And what I see is Seth being very disingenuous. That's what I see.
Why is that?
Because every time I want to speak to her, I'm going to have to speak to Chris.
And maybe Katie doesn't want to speak to Seth because he's an angry man. Maybe.
Chris wasn't there. I don't know why he needs to be involved in a conversation about what happened that night.
Well, because he's Katie's husband and because Katie wants him there. That's why. Just because Seth is still in love with Katie probably makes Katie feel uncomfortable. And the fact that Seth is an angry man maybe makes Katie feel uncomfortable. So she wants her husband there as a support system. Maybe, possibly. I don't know.
And if he was on a phone call, then maybe he can tell us what the thud was.
He is, PJ, so entitled. He is. He's like this holier than thou, perfect parent, helicopter parent, when he isn't. He isn't a helicopter parent. Me and Baby thought that at first. Like, oh, poor Seth. And Seth himself has put the idea in my head with his own words that he's anything but a helicopter parent. Am I saying he's a bad parent? No, not necessarily. But personally, I wouldn't leave a 15-year-old for 14 hours, especially overnight. I might leave them in the day, as long as they had access to a phone and I had access to a phone. But overnight, not at 15. I wouldn't feel comfortable with that. And we know that this had to be overnight because Seth works nights, and Seth has said that he rings Sebastian when it's time for Sebastian to go to bed. So if he works 6 till 6, that would mean he'd be leaving Sebastian at like 5-ish, and then we'll be getting home at 7 in the morning. And that's if Seth didn't have to stay and do another couple of hours. So it's overnight. I'm not sure I'd leave a 15-year-old overnight. I mean, maybe as a one-off, if you've got no choice, if it's like an emergency or something, maybe I would then. But I wouldn't as a routine. I wouldn't think it was appropriate as a routine. But hearing a thud from a bedroom when I've shouted in and, you know, said, are you all right? Or go to bed or whatever words were used, and the 15-year-old replies, I wouldn't feel there was anything, I'd done anything wrong there. So, doesn't say this, does he, to Vinnie Politan? Doesn't say any of this.
How about the rest of the day leading up to the point that Sebastian got home? Who was the last person other than?
Most of those hours he would have been asleep. Would he though, Tina? Because we've heard from all the parents that Sebastian wasn't a very good sleeper. So if you're leaving at 5 p.m. to start work at 6, well, Sebastian's going to be up till 10, 11, midnight, because he's 15, right? And then maybe he'd be asleep when Seth got home. But then Seth would need to sleep, so Seth would have to go to bed at some point. So Sebastian would be up in the day while Seth was asleep. So no, whichever way you try to cut that, Sebastian wouldn't be asleep for most of that time. He might be asleep for 6 hours of that time. But no, for the majority of the time, he'd be awake, doing whatever he wanted to do. He could go out, he could do whatever. He could have had a party and Seth wouldn't know. Yeah, Seth uses his disappointment and anger as a defense while no one will ask him hard questions. I agree with that. But when people do ask him hard questions, he gets angry. And some of the stuff he said, in my opinion, is totally inappropriate. Should not have been said, should not have been out there at all. And then other stuff he said, well, it's made us realise that this holier-than-thou entitlement that he's got and this helicopter parent that he tried to portray himself as isn't true. Doesn't mean to say he was a bad parent, but he's certainly not a helicopter parent, and he certainly shouldn't be criticising Katie's parenting either. So,
His mom to see him, and have you spoken with that person?
No, I guess the last person to see him besides mom would be, you know, the waitress at the Texas Roadhouse.
Okay, maybe that is the last person to visibly see him, like eyes on him. But remember, he was on camera putting the trash out from the camera across the street. Now, that wasn't a clear view. It was somewhat of a silhouette. But the only two people it could have been is Katie or Sebastian. And surely Katie's silhouette would have looked different on a camera than Sebastian's. I don't know because I haven't seen that footage. Maybe it was even too blurry or too far away to even tell whether it was, you know, Katie or Sebastian. So there's that. But yeah, the person previous who actually had eyes on him was the person at the Texas Roadhouse. So that's right, as far as we know.
And Tony, as we try to track and figure out who interacted with Sebastian, where he could have gone, how this could have happened. From your perspective, what are the lingering questions that you see in this case as well?
Well, if you're talking about that situation specifically, Vinnie, I mean, clearly she was the last person that was seen with him. There has been no evidence that he ever left the house on his own. So in my mind, what would be the opposite of him?
Well, there actually is evidence that he left the house, not necessarily on his own, but he left the house. And Vinnie gets into that after they leave.
leaving the house on his own. It would be leaving the house with somebody. Well, the only somebody, admittingly, by Katie that was in that house was hers.
So he's implying that Katie and Sebastian left together. Well, there's no evidence of that. No evidence of that either. Because if Katie had left with Sebastian in a car, then there would have been camera footage of them leaving in a car for the reasons that I've talked about in many videos.
Clearly, we have some questions there, but my bigger question as Seth's spokesperson, and where I would ask Court TV to give us some assistance is, we have video.
So he wants Court TV to assist in the investigation. What are Court TV going to be able to do? What can Court TV do? I mean, maybe as a large media company, maybe they could put some pressure on law enforcement, but law enforcement are not obliged to speak to Court TV or do anything Court TV ask. That's also true, PJ. He knew Sebastian was not being treated properly. Chris' punishment. Yeah, I think Chris's punishments were way too harsh. Like some of the stuff that Chris has admitted to, I think are way too harsh for a child. But personally, that's my view. Some people disagree. Some people think that Chris's punishments were fine. But personally, I wouldn't have punished a kid in the way that Chris punished a child. The alleged essay, yeah, which Seth said happened years ago. That doesn't make it right, doesn't make it any less impactful, but happened a long time ago when Sebastian, I think, was about 8. And that was under Katie's watch, which Seth talked about. Well, Seth can't have been that concerned about it because surely Seth would have applied for custody far sooner because this happened years ago. So the stuff that Seth has let out is not right. It shouldn't have never have happened to Sebastian, but Seth did nothing to make Sebastian's world better. He only released that information to make Katie look bad, to make Katie and Chris look bad.
Evidence that shows that Seth was at work. We've had all of his electronic devices that have been seized and dumped. We'd like to know why Seth still hasn't been cleared, or what they might need from Seth and or myself to get him cleared.
Well, they don't need anything from you, Tony, because you're irrelevant as far as law enforcement or anyone else is concerned. So, yeah, Seth's on camera at Davidson County Jail, whatever. So, according to Seth's on camera, right? And then they've checked his phone, they've checked his devices, all of that. They've got all of that information. But yet they still haven't cleared him. Well, neither have they cleared Katie and Chris. They don't clear parents. They don't. Like, I had this argument with people in the Michael Vaughan case that, the cops were saying that they knew Michael had been abducted, but yet they didn't come out and clear the parents. Like, they didn't come out and use those words, Brandy and Tyler have been cleared. They said they believe the family are not involved. They use those kind of words, like no evidence of foul play on behalf of the family. They use that kind of wording. And the cops here have said the same. They've said there's no evidence of foul play and that the family are cooperating. That's as far as they go, because until they actually have evidence that even a crime was committed, because in this case, they have no evidence even that a crime was committed. Now, in Michael's case, within a few months, they had developed evidence that a crime had potentially taken place. And they had suspects like Stacey Wanderer, Sarah Wanderer, Brandon Shirtliff, and Adrian Lucian. Like, they had them as persons of interest months before they released their names to the public. They had that information months previous. They were just building a case so that they could, you know, confidently come out and name them as suspects. So until they have that information, they're not going to clear anybody publicly. Because it's always possible, even if somebody's on camera, even if their phone looks clean, it's still possible they could have some involvement, that they could, I don't know, set up somebody else to take Sebastian. They can't, I'm not saying that that happened at all. I'm just saying that from law enforcement's point of view, they can't discount something like that. So they're not going to clear a parent. So I think that's the reason why they've not cleared, like actually said the words, Seth, Katie and Chris are cleared, because they don't do that. No, we don't know that Sebastian was being constantly punished. We don't know that it was constant. We don't know that there was constant abuse. All I'm saying is I personally wouldn't have used the discipline methods that Chris did. That's just my personal opinion. We don't know that he was being abused on a daily basis. In fact, we know that he wasn't, because Chris was working like away. He'd been working away for, what was it, 3 weeks, 2 weeks previous to Sebastian going missing. So we do know that the abuse, if indeed there was abuse, it wasn't constant. Didn't Nick Barris' redacted FB post say Chris and Katie were cleared? I don't know, because I didn't see the post. I didn't see it before he redacted it and rewrote it. I didn't see it, so I don't know. If anybody managed to screenshot it before he changed it, let me know. So I don't know what he said in the redacted version. But if he said that they were cleared, maybe they've said, you know, privately to Nick, there's no evidence that Chris and Katie were involved. We don't consider them relevant. Maybe they've said things like that to, you know, to Nick privately. I saw the post. He did change it. Okay. I know he changed it because he said himself that he changed it. But what I'm saying is I didn't know what he said in that first post. He only omitted 2 words. Okay. Wasn't necessarily abuse, but punishment of one type or another. Yeah. There was like, he was quite harsh with his punishments, but there's no evidence that those punishments happened regularly. And again, that doesn't make, in my mind, doesn't make it right, in my mind. But it does reassure me, at least, that it wasn't constant.
So they have not cleared. I didn't realize that.
Is Vinnie genuinely shocked here, do you think? Because he's like, because he was a prosecutor, wasn't he, in his previous life? Like when he was a lawyer, he was a prosecutor. So he's like, shit, could I be talking to a suspect here? Have I got a suspect on my show? He cuts him off after this. He does, Mike. He does. But was it genuinely because he was out of time? Vinny's a drama queen. Oh, he is. He absolutely is. I like Vinny. I do like Vinny. It's genuine though. Like, I didn't realize that. Oh no.
I just didn't realize that was the situation. So
not at all. So
my guess is if they haven't cleared him, that may explain some of the lack of communication that is.
Vinny's like, shit, he's a suspect. The cops are not telling him because he's a suspect. I think that the cops are not telling Seth stuff because he's angry and they know that he releases information. I think that's why they stopped communicating with Seth. And that, again, I don't know. I wasn't there. That's just my opinion. The reason why I think that is because it seems that Chris and Katie have more information from the police, that they've said that they have constant, regular communication with the police. And I think the police are more inclined to tell Chris and Katie stuff that's not necessarily public and that they don't want public. Not that they'll tell them everything. I don't think that's the case. They won't do that. They will never do that. But stuff that is not critical to the integrity of the investigation, but is, they don't necessarily want it to be public. I think they would disclose that to Chris and Katie because they know that Chris and Katie wouldn't tell the public. If they said, look, we can tell you this, this, and this, but please, we don't want this to go public just yet. So please keep this to yourself. This is for your ears only. Chris and Katie would abide by that. But Seth wouldn't, given that all the stuff that Seth has said, they can't tell him stuff that they don't want made public yet because they can't trust him. I think that's the reason why they stopped communicating with him. That's just my opinion. But I don't necessarily think it's because they think he's a suspect.
Going back and forth in this case.
Good possibility. But what more do you want from me? I was at work. I was video camera from 6 p.m. till after 7 a.m. the next morning. You know, my son should be with me right now. He should be in this house and I should not be looking for him. Tell me where I don't gain anything from this. This is not funny. You know, the fact is I'm looking for my son. He's not here. Y'all took my electronics. What more do you want? I mean, do they need my bank records? I mean, you can have them. I mean, I don't understand what I have to do to get cleared.
Well, again, it's not a case of being cleared. Look, I don't think Seth has anything to do with Sebastian's disappearance. I really don't. I don't think he set it up. I know some people think that, you know, he's hiding Sebastian somewhere to get at Katie. And whilst that is possible, I honestly don't think Seth gains anything by doing that. Because Sebastian was going to go and live with him anyway in May. So I personally don't think he gains by having someone kidnap Sebastian. But again, it doesn't mean to say just because he's on camera at work that they are going to clear him.
Well, and do anything to get him cleared, Vinnie.
Go ahead, Tony.
There are resources.
Yeah, we're willing to do anything to work with them to get him cleared because it does allow us to bring in more resources once he's clear.
I don't know what more resources that they would be entitled to if the cops said he was cleared. I don't understand what that kind of resource would look like. I don't really understand what he means by that, honestly. If anybody does have an idea what he's talking about, like what kind of organisation would only work with them if the police said, you know, the words, Seth is cleared. What more resource would be available? I don't really understand that.
And, you know, if the video evidence, the phone data, and whatever else they may need isn't enough, then we'd simply like us to tell them, you know, why is it that he hasn't been cleared? He did a polygraph test with a well-known FBI polygrapher that Nancy Grace set up, and he passed that with flying colors. So, you know,
we're out of time, unfortunately. Tony, I'm sorry I have to cut you off there. We're out of time, but thank you both for joining us. We'll still look for those answers as the investigation continues.
All right. Dramatic music. Right. So he's got a couple of guests on now. Not necessarily going to play all of this. I'm just going to play the first few minutes. Chris McDonough's on, and a psychotherapist whose name escapes me. So we're just going to play the first few minutes of this. Interesting, but let's see.
I'm Vinnie Politan. Our investigation into the disappearance of 15-year-old Sebastian Rogers from...
They say the Cold Case Foundation. Oh. No, because the Cold Case Foundation worked with Brandy and Tyler. And the cops didn't say to the public the words, Brandy and Tyler have been cleared. The cops said to the public that something like they don't believe the family are involved or something like that. It means the same thing. Now, maybe privately, the cops, because Fruitland PD were working with the Cold Case Foundation. Like Chris McDonough, as a representative of the Cold Case Foundation, was actually at the press conference. You could see him, like, standing with the cops when they announced those suspects. So we know full well that the Cold Case Foundation was involved behind the scenes as part of the investigative crew. So maybe privately, you know, Fruitland PD had said to the Cold Case Foundation, we have cleared the parents. Maybe they said that privately. Is it that the Cold Case Foundation have spoken to Sumner County and Sumner County refused to do that? I don't know. I don't know. But, you know, in my opinion, certainly as a public, we don't have information that makes us believe that the cops consider the parents, any of the parents, suspects. They haven't said anything that would even hint at that. That's according to Seth and Tony, so take that with a grain of salt. Okay, I will. But I don't think the Cold Case Foundation would require the cops to come out publicly and say that Seth had been cleared. They may want it privately, and maybe Sumner County refused to do that. Maybe they do. Maybe they do, which is interesting. But again, I don't necessarily think it makes Seth a suspect. All three are suspects. I think all three would be, certainly in the early days, persons of interest, but it doesn't mean to say that the cops still believe that they're persons of interest. However, what they won't do is go so far as to say they've been cleared for all the reasons that I've said. And it's the same in this country as well. It's the same in this country. You know, the cops are, they'll use words that mean the same thing, but it's not quite the same. You know, like we don't, they'll say something like, at this time, we have no evidence that the family are involved. Something like that.
His home in Tennessee continues. The circumstances surrounding this disappearance, though, really raise a lot of questions that need to be answered. Here's more of his story. 15-year-old Sebastian.
All right, we know his story, so I'm going to just move it on a couple of minutes to the... Oh, I want to listen to this. All right, let me listen to this. Because Vinnie doesn't seem to... Vinnie, he's talking about the dogs now. And Vinnie doesn't know where the dispatch audio came from. So, all right. Okay, Vinnie.
This is a case that's been very short on evidence, but an audio recording has been circulating online that sounds like it could be a radio transmission from a canine handler during the search for Sebastian. Now,
right. It was a dispatch audio. And if Vinnie would kindly go to Broadcastify and look at the archives for the 26th of February, and it has like, it does them in hour slots, so just go to the hour that you need. You have to pay a small fee to get into the archives, but this is what you need to do, Vinnie. Go to Broadcastify, pay a few dollars, get into the archives, go to Sumner County, Tennessee, and look at the 26th of February between 7 and 8, I think it is, and you will hear them on the dispatch talk about Max. So it's all there. Yes, it's been circulating online, but it's genuine dispatch audio. You can get it yourself if you so wish. So anyway, this is the dispatch of Max, the German Shepherd, following the trail to the retention pond. We've all heard it multiple times, many times. I've played this on my channel. Yeah, why is Vinnie acting like this is possibly real dispatch audio? I know it's silly. I don't know why he just doesn't say this is the dispatch audio from that day. I don't know why he has to make it like suspicious and mysterious. I don't know why he has to do that. Because Court TV could literally go and get it themselves. They don't have to play it off anyone's channel. They don't have to play it off social media. I'm sure they have the money to go and pay their few dollars for the Broadcastify audio and just play it directly from the dispatch audio. Sure, you could do that. But anyway.
the speaker on this audio references several places near Sebastian's home, like the construction site, the cemetery, and the retention pond. The link to this audio file was uploaded to Twitter by SF Investigates, but it's unclear where the recording came from.
Oh, Vinnie! Vinnie! Now, SF Investigates, Steve Fisher. He's not a PI on the case and never has been, but he does speak to Kate and Chris, and I've had some minor, brief communication with him, like offline, talking about Sebastian's case. So he's never worked as a PI, but he has followed the case, and he's talked about the case on Twitter. He's been in my chat sometimes, and he's followed the case very closely. So Vinnie said, oh, I got this mysterious audio from SF Investigates Twitter. Makes it sound not legitimate, when it absolutely is. He doesn't need to go on anybody's Twitter and get it from there. He can go to Broadcastify, look for the county, look for the date, look for the time, and there it is. There it is. So he really doesn't need to make this mysterious. It is a drama queen move. That's what it is. Oh, who's talking about Woolworths? Oh, I used to love Woolworths. I don't know why you're talking about Woolworths, Flicking, but I used to love Woolworths. Pick and mix. The best pick and mix. The best pick and mix ever.
Originally.
Nice big track back up, going into the construction site over here, back towards the beach. We'll go on behind you. It's awful muddy. Do you see any footprints, anything? You shouldn't have any shoes on. Hey, this is all dry, hard packed. Outside report. LT, we're now headed back south towards the cemetery on the far end of the construction site. Oh boy, I can see. I do have some footprints over here. Right there where you're standing? Yeah, leading right over here to the retaining pond. No shoes, just footprints? The shoes that Max went straight into the pond. He literally dove into it.
So if you've got the canines taking the handler somewhere, what exactly does that mean? Brings me to our next question in this investigation, which is, did Sebastian walk away? Did he walk away? Just leave home for whatever reason? To try to answer this question, let's bring in our experts, relationship trauma expert, psychotherapist, and CEO of Life Counseling Solutions, Dr. Janie Lacey is with.
Why does that say Dr. Gary Broccato? Why does that say Dr. Gary Broccato? I've literally only just noticed it, but why does it? Was Gary meant to be on and couldn't make it, so she stepped in? We know that's not Gary. I watched this earlier this morning and I didn't notice it then. Interesting. I think Gary was meant to be on, probably couldn't make it for whatever reason, and they've just forgot to change. They've just forgot to change the name. I don't know. Maybe I'm guessing. But that's not Gary. For anybody who's asking, that's not Gary. All right. So it's someone else and Chris McDonough.
With me. Also joining me, former homicide detective and host of The Interview Room with Chris McDonough. Chris McDonough is with us as well. Great to see you both. Chris, we'll start with you. What are your thoughts about this recording and the thoughts of the canines and their handlers following some scent somewhere?
Well, first of all, Vinnie, the recording in of itself, and I was a dog handler from 1986 to 1989. And when a dog is on a track like that, is she picking up the scent of the boy headed towards that pond? Is that a possibility? Absolutely. It could be a possibility. So the investigation then would have to shift into, the water resources in relationship to that pond to make sure they've checked that box.
And they absolutely have done that. We know they've done that. They've told us they've done that. They drained the retention pond. Let me just show you. Let me just remind you. I'm going to have to, still got Fairview Drive up here, Stafford Court. All right. So this is Stafford Court. Okay. All right. So this is Sebastian's house right there. And then this is the construction site. It does look a little bit different now because this is July 2023. So it's a year old, this. Google haven't updated for a year. So for those not familiar, I mean, if you're familiar with my coverage of this case, you will be sick to the back teeth of this map. Why no scent in the house? Of course there's scent in the house. Sebastian lived there. They don't need to send search dogs around the house because they know Sebastian lived there. So, Mike, I don't know what will benefit them taking the dogs in the house because he lived there. They took cadaver dogs in the house. You may be confusing live scent tracking dogs, which are tracking a live person, and cadaver dogs, which are they're scenting the smell of death. So they took cadaver dogs around the house, and there was no hits in the house. So I think that's probably what you mean in there. All right. So for those people who did drive arounds, like back in the early days, did drive arounds of this area, we know that this area is houses now. Like all this front part is houses. And then this back part is still construction. So the retention pond is around there somewhere. You can't see it on this map, but the retention pond's somewhere in this area. So you've got back end of the construction site, leads onto the cemetery. There's a little church there. This is the cemetery. You can see some of the gravestones there. And then to the east of that is that Sebastian School. So Sebastian School, very close in proximity. So you've got Sebastian's house, you've got Kelling Lane, you've then got the construction site, this part being houses now, this part all being construction now. Then you've got the cemetery, then you've got his school. So they checked this entire area. Like you can hear them on the dispatch audio checking this area very early doors. Now, this is Google Maps. I've not got my Google Earth up because I have to stop sharing and reshare, and it's a whole thing. Because on Google Earth, I've got it all mapped. Like I've got all the tracks and everything. But basically, what the search dogs did was go from Sebastian's house. Sorry, this one's Sebastian's house, not that one. This is Sebastian's house. The dogs, not all the dogs. Was the vent open? The vent that you're talking about, some of you are talking about a vent which is behind the back of the school somewhere. Now, the map won't allow me to look at the vent that you're all talking about. Like a few people. No, they didn't grid search. No, anti-re. No, they didn't grid search the entire 5 mile radius, which I'll talk about in a second. But the vent that you're all talking about, there are a few people that mentioned it to me. You can't see it on the map, so I don't know exactly where this vent is. I would assume that the entire external of the school has been checked. So I just have to hope and pray that it was. I can't tell you any more than that. So in terms of the 5 mile radius, which I've also got on my Google Earth, oh, darn it. I'm just going to share my Google Earth. It's going to be easier. It just means I've got to stop sharing Vinnie, reshare, because Google Earth won't register as a window. I have to then share my entire screen. It's just a whole thing. All right. This is my Google Earth. Hold on a minute. Okay. All right. So again, you're probably sick to the back teeth of this map if you've watched my videos. So I've plotted the cameras that are mentioned on the dispatch audio. So these are the ones that were checked and verified as having no data on them that relevant to Sebastian on the very day, actually on the very morning that he went missing. The cameras that would be of most importance to us are these ones here, because these ones would have picked up a vehicle leaving or coming in. So if like Katie had whisked him away in the middle of the night, then at least one of these 3 cameras would have picked that up. There's also cameras up here. There are more cameras on Kelling, but they're not mentioned on the dispatch audio, so I've not put them in. But these cameras didn't pick him up, didn't pick Sebastian up, because it's dark and the cameras were situated too far away from the road. And the FBI have actually done tests, experiments, walking up and down Kelling Lane to see whether the cameras pick up them, and they didn't. Now, I have a little bit more information about the cameras that I'm not allowed to share, but it's not been made public. It's nothing devastating, breaking news. It's just I've been asked not to share certain pieces of information about the cameras, so I'm not going to. But suffice to say that these cameras were checked and experimented on by the FBI, and they did not pick up their detectives walking up and down the road. So it's highly likely that if Sebastian had walked this route, he would not have been picked up by those cameras on Kelly Lane. And I have that on good authority. Okay, so this is where the retention pond is. Now, Max tracked from the house through this yard, up Kelly, then down into kind of the backside of the construction site. He threw a right, and then he dove right into the retention pond. Now, Chris McDonough said, well, you know, they've got to check all the water. They did. They drained that entire pond. It wasn't a deep pond anyway, but it's very muddy on the bottom. So they drained that pond. Then they walked it. So they drained all the water out, then they walked it. And by walking it, you're able to then feel about in the mud at the bottom of the pond. They did that. Now, they did that in a grid. And also, Trey from Narc Divers also walked that pond, that same pond. He walked it, and it was actually on camera. I've watched him. He was filmed while he did it. He walked up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. And anything that he felt that was firm on the bottom, he reached down into the mud and found some clothing in that pond, but it wasn't related to Sebastian. So that pond has been drained and walked at least twice. Once by law enforcement and then by Trey from Narc Divers. So we know Sebastian is not in that pond. But the question I've got, the burning question is, why did the dogs lose his scent there? Why there? Why there? And it's an open question. Now, according to Chris, and you guys who think Chris is guilty are not going to believe Chris, are you? But Chris also told Trey from Narc Divers, he also told, I think it was Web Sleuths. No, it wasn't. Maybe it was Cluminati. I can't remember who. He gave a very, I've even got it in my files somewhere, but I'm going to just play the one he told Narc Divers. So, all right. So this is a really bad recording. Oh, okay. I'm going to do it again like this. All right, it's a really bad recording, but he said the same to, I'm sure it was Cluminati. But there was 3 dogs in total, as well as Max, that did that same track. So this is the route this is Trey from Narc Divers. This is the route. I've put subtitles on so that you can hear it.
If you're looking at my house, it's going to be the right-hand side. The dog goes all the way down the fence. The dog comes all the way back up into the yard. And then it cuts that back over to the house and soils through the back door. And that's the place which the dogs take off. And after that, that's where they get over to the neighbor and go up Kelly. Then head over to the other subdivision.
All right, so that's what he said to Trey from Narc Divers. However, he gave a little bit more detail to, I'm sure it was Cluminati. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure it was Cluminati. That 3 other dogs also walked the same path. So there was a bloodhound, a blue tick coon hound, and then another one that I don't know the breed of, also followed the same path from the house, through the yard, up Kelly, into the construction, and then to the retention pond. No, it wasn't Dutchy. I'm sure it was Cluminati. I'm 90% sure it was Cluminati. But I think he also told, when he was on Web Sleuths, I think he also talked about it. But if you don't want to believe Chris, that's fine. Now, other dogs didn't follow this path. Other dogs didn't. Other dogs just went randomly other places. But it will be because the scent has been blown all over the place. So probably the dogs that had the best technique, like putting their nose to the ground and sniffing the ground scent, actually got it. So I truly believe that Sebastian went this way. I truly believe he went this way. You're going to have to work hard to convince me that all of those dogs were wrong. And if you don't want to believe Chris, then believe Max on the dispatch audio. But if you don't want to believe any of them, then that's your choice. Anyway, back to Vinnie. I'm just going to play a few more minutes of this interview here with Chris and the psychotherapist whose name has escaped me. All right, where are we at? Here we are. Right, we'll have to do another sound check now. Right, let me know you can hear this.
Let me ask you, Dr. Jenny Lacey, this is a 15-year-old child with autism. We're asking the question, did Sebastian walk away? How do you analyze that issue, knowing a little bit about Sebastian, not a whole lot, but we know he's a child with autism. He's able to do things. He goes to school. You know, he's still a teenager, and he, you know, has those teenage issues as well. You know, a little bit of friction at home with mom. What are your thoughts about the?
Look, we were led to believe, and I don't know whether it was purposeful by the parents or not. We were led to believe that basically Sebastian needed a whole lot of care, that he was he was special needs, but he was very special needs, if you will. That he needed a lot of, it was almost like he couldn't be left on his own. He couldn't be trusted to do anything. That was the impression, certainly, that I got in the early days. And then as we learned more, then we learned that he was very capable of looking after himself. He was very capable of staying all night on his own, cooking his own food. Katie also left him home alone, but not for very long. Like, Sebastian would get off the bus from school and Katie would be at work. And then Katie would, like, come home, you know, I don't know, 5:30, whatever. I don't know what time she finished work, but she came home at, you know, she worked like normal day shifts. So for at least 2 hours, Sebastian would be on his own, doing whatever Sebastian did, while Katie was at work. So both parents did leave him home alone. So he was capable of being left home alone. I don't think there's anything wrong with leaving a 15-year-old for a couple of hours on their own. I like my kids would, you know, I'd be at work and they would come home as teenagers on their own. No friction, no bother, no, like at 15, I wouldn't see anything wrong with leaving a 15-year-old for a few hours. Overnight, as I said previously, I would have a problem with at 15. I wouldn't feel comfortable with that. Like for 14 hours at a stretch overnight, that's too much in my opinion. But that is just my opinion. So we know that Sebastian, for all intents and purposes, was a normal teenager, being treated like a normal teenager, going to a mainstream school. Yes, he did lessons that were like if they had a test, he'd be given extra time or something like that. So there was accommodations made for him on the special needs program. But he was very intelligent, could play chess. His issue was his social skills. Like, he wasn't as socially skilled as the average 15-year-old. He had difficulty making friends. So that was his issue. But otherwise, for all intents and purposes, he was a normal teenager. Okay.
The prospects and trying to figure out whether or not this child with autism at age 15 would simply walk away from home.
Well, my thoughts, Vinnie, would be we would want to collect as much past history as possible. So what was his normal habits? What were any circumstances where he would do things that would be out of his normal pattern? Who were the people who had the most access to him, and what would be some of their impressions, observations, if he tend to have normal habits, if he tend to have repetitive habits. So those would be some of the collection points that we would want to understand, the observations, what was his habits, what were the things that people reported that was any type of strange behavior, because we know that past behavior can predict future behavior. So we want to look at some of those kind of pieces to see if the possibility for him to just walk out of his home and to some of these areas would be likely based off of his past indications of behavior or past observations from those that had access to him.
Okay, so that's a good reply. We do know that Sebastian walked about in his neighborhood. So past behavior sometimes, not all the time, sometimes predicts future behavior. We know from the dispatch audio from 2 different neighbors that they'd seen Sebastian out in the neighborhood. We heard from one of the neighbors on Stafford Court. Now, I don't know exactly which neighbor it was, but it was one of them 2 doors up on the opposite side. So it's going to be either this one or this one, right? That neighbor told the cops, and they talked about it on the dispatch audio, that he'd found, so the neighbor had found Sebastian hiding under one of his vehicles. So we know that he liked to hide for whatever reason. Maybe he was upset, maybe he was overwhelmed, maybe he was playing a game with himself. He had a habit of hiding under stuff, which is why in the press conferences, they were pleading for people in that area to check their crawl spaces, check under vehicles, check sheds, barns, all of that stuff where a teenager could get into, because they knew that he liked to hide in small spaces. Another neighbor way over on, what's it called this? Willow Boulevard, right over here. So this is part of the construction area, but this is more built now. One of the neighbors on Willow Boulevard said that he'd seen Sebastian like out and about in his neighborhood. Like, you know, he'd said like, oh, I seen that kid like wandering about, but not recently. And I think the reason why he on Willow Boulevard had not seen Sebastian recently is because there's no longer anything of interest for Sebastian here. Now the houses were built. So I suspect once these houses were built, Sebastian moved over to here and liked playing on this construction site because he liked vehicles. He liked, like, you know, big vehicles. So if they'd left any, you know, big vehicles there, he probably played on them. So we do know some of Sebastian's habits. We do know that he did wander at least sometimes out and about and was known to some of the neighbors. So could a predator in the area have befriended him? Absolutely. If a predator had befriended him, we're assuming that it was a predator online, which it could have been, but it could have been a predator in the area. Could have been. Yeah, he also had access to computers at school. He did, absolutely. He had access to computers at school. He had access to the internet at Seth's house. He had a phone. So he could talk to people. For all intents and purposes, he was a normal teenager, but probably more vulnerable than the average teenager because he wasn't as equipped as an average teenager would be, you know, doing just like normal things like, you know, socializing with friends. He wasn't very good at that. So potentially more vulnerable to predators. So it's definitely a possibility that he'd befriended the wrong person. Anyone know where Sebastian's phone is? The police have it.
All right, Chris, from your perspective, trying to put together pieces and trying to figure out, did he or did he not just simply walk away from his home? What are some of the things that you're looking for, and what are some of the things that have been revealed that would be significant in trying to answer that question?
Well, the first thing, Vinnie, is whenever a child goes missing, you have about 3 hours from a law enforcement perspective to react. And that means, you know, shut the scene down, shut the house down, because, you know, statistically across this country, there's what they call the victim risk continuum. And the lower the risk, the higher the probability that there was, you know, some type of cross germination to either a suspect and or, you know, a risk activity that put the child in jeopardy. Let's use Elizabeth Smart for an example. She's sleeping in her room. All of a sudden, she disappears out of her house. But her sister remembered that it could have been the handyman. This was months later. So that showed that the investigation stayed at the home. In this particular case, you have mom who says, I saw him go to bed. I heard a thump. I went to bed. I woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning. He's gone. Well, children just don't vanish. So what are
they don't, but sometimes they leave their house. Sometimes they just leave their house. And if they leave their house when their parent is asleep, the parent has absolutely no awareness. You know, it seems that exactly the same thing has happened in the case of Angel Turner that we talked about earlier. Where's Angel? Here she is. Angel Turner, also age 15. Talked about her at the beginning of this live stream. 15 years old. Dad goes to bed on the Friday night, gets up on the Saturday morning. Angel's nowhere to be seen. The dog's outside. The dog should not be outside. But Angel's nowhere to be seen, and she hasn't been seen since. Concern about her talking to people online. Her parents have been trying to restrict her online access. So if Angel Turner can go out in the night and her dad has no knowledge. Now, obviously, we don't know very much about Angel's case yet because it's brand new. But based on what we know at the moment, it appears very similar to that of Sebastian. The parent sees the kid, knows they're in the room when they go to bed, gets up in the morning, kid's gone. So why would Sebastian's case be any different? Because he's autistic? Well, being autistic wouldn't preclude him from going for a walk. It actually might increase his chances of going for a walk at night because maybe he likes walking at night because it's quiet, it's calm. A lot of people like the dark. It's not true that Sebastian's afraid of the dark. That was a rumor that went around that is not true. So, yes, kids don't vanish, but kids do go out for a walk at night or go to meet someone. Go to meet someone at night. Is it the case that Angel has gone out to meet someone at night? Her mother thinks so. We don't know as of yet. Did Sebastian, same age as Angel, go and meet someone at night? Possible. Absolutely possible. But also, equally possible, he could have gone out for a walk. I don't think he planned to run away. Like I don't think Angel planned to run away. But again, we don't know very much about Angel's case yet. But neither of them took anything with them that you might expect them to take, like their phone. Or they could be aware that they could be tracked by their phone, so they leave the phone behind. But we would expect Angel being pre-diabetic and having a thyroid problem to have taken her medication, but she didn't. And also, she left her dog behind. Why would she leave her dog and her medication behind if she was planning to run away? In Sebastian's case, dogs were where they were meant to be. His medication's there, but his medication, unlike Angel's, isn't life-threatening. If he doesn't take his medication, he's going to become hyper and probably, scatty and probably maybe a wee bit manic. But it's not life-threatening. But Angel, her medication, potentially life-threatening if she doesn't take it. So what's different? People go walking at night. Kids go out and meet people that the parents are not aware of. Being autistic does not preclude somebody from those behaviors. So no, kids don't just vanish. However, they do go for a walk. And sometimes that ends badly. Either predators arranging to meet them, grooming them, whatever. On odd occasions, not very often, thankfully, they get picked up by somebody just out on the prowl, like in Michael Vaughan's case, sadly. Other times they go out and they have an accident and they're not found for ages, which is, again, unfortunate. Because, to go back to a comment from earlier, no, they did not grid search the entire 5-mile radius. That would be impossible to grid search all of that area in a week. What they did was a search of that 5-mile radius, but for a live person. And it's very different searching for a live person than it is searching for a body. Because with a body, you could be literally yards away from that body and not see it. If that body is down a ravine or in deep undergrowth, something like that, you would not see it. Whereas for a live person, you don't need to grid search because you would expect that person, if they're lost, to assist in their own rescue. That, they hear people shouting their name and they shout back. They see a helicopter overhead and they try to, wave their arms about, try to make themselves larger so that they're seen. They see a dog searching, so they shout for the dog. They shout, they keep shouting. They assist in their own rescue. A dead person can't assist in their own rescue. So grid search is necessary for dead people in areas where visibility is poor. Not so much for a live person. All right, we're just going to play another maybe minute or so of this, and then we're going to call it.
What are the probabilities, based on what the doc just said, that could be reality? So as an investigation, you want to start in a house. You want to start with everybody in the house, everybody related to the house, and then search the neighborhood. And you'll be surprised with today's technology how the circle gets smaller, smaller, and smaller.
And that's exactly what they've done. That's exactly what they've done. They don't need to tell us that they've done that. We heard on the dispatch audio that they got all the camera footage from everybody who was in. Oh, thank you, Flickin, for the 5 gifted memberships. That's very kind of you. So we've got Girl Next Door, Prying Paula, Tim C. Oh no, sorry, Tim, not you. That's just a regular comment. Criminal Med and Kelly Olivia and Kazoodles. So you guys get a month's free membership courtesy of Flicking Bollocks, who has the best name. So thank you so much. Welcome, you guys. I can't remember what I was saying now. I'm getting tired, can you tell? I can't remember what I was saying. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, that's exactly what they did. On the dispatch audio, we heard them going door to door. They searched people's yards. Like if they weren't in, if they didn't get an answer, they just searched people's yards. They went in people's crawl spaces if they could get in. They searched a cave and couldn't get all the way in, but still had a go. And we heard it all on dispatch audio. They checked as many cameras as they could. They obviously went back and, checked off all the people who weren't in. They checked the local RSOs in the area very early on. And of course, they'd have been working very early on to verify that, those closest to the, to the house, as Chris calls it, but closest to Sebastian, had alibis. Now, allegedly, Chris and Seth do, because they're on camera and in places far away. Katie doesn't have an alibi because she was there in the house. So they have to use other means to check that Katie didn't murder Sebastian. So what did they do? They went round that house with cadaver dogs. They forensically tested that house with whatever they use to forensically test for things like blood. They use ultraviolet light. And then if they get any signs, then they can use things like luminol. If they get any signs of things that might be blood under ultraviolet light, then they get the luminol out. Now, if they don't find any signs whilst under ultraviolet, they might not use luminol. But they do that kind of thing. They did that kind of thing in this case. They can also check the cameras to check that Katie did not leave at a time that she, said was at home. So they can rule out Katie as much as possible, bearing in mind what I said earlier about they'll never clear parents, because how would they know that the parents, not arranged it? There's always that possibility. But they'd have had to be very, very, very stealthy to get Sebastian out, especially in a vehicle. But they don't have to tell us anything. No, they don't have to tell us if they did find anything. They don't have to tell us if they did find anything. But if they did find, like, a pool of blood, like that had been cleaned up, but still, evidence of it, I think probably there would have been an arrest. I think probably by now there would have been an arrest. So no, they don't have to tell us, but we can glean from what they haven't done that they didn't find anything untoward in that house. Because if they had found evidence of blood, evidence of a cleanup, that even a strong smell of bleach, then it sets off their antenna and they go full force into a forensic examination. So if they had found evidence of a fight, blood, all of that stuff, a cadaver dog had alerted in that house, I can guarantee you, in fact, there would have been an arrest by now. So
those are a couple of things that I think this investigation started, and it looks like they did a pretty good job based on the filming that I've seen.
Now, Sebastian's dad joined the Pascal Show on YouTube and discussed what law enforcement's dog handlers told him about the search for Sebastian.
One dog followed a scent out into a construction site and then it disappeared. Could you maybe expand on that or explain a little bit more about that?
One of the dog handlers told me first day,
wow,
Monday, that the dog popped to a trail and they followed it and went all the way around and it ended in a construction site, but it ended. It's like there was nothing there.
Right. And that's a little odd.
Which
right?
Leads me to believe that, well, if it ends, normally the scent ends when you stop traveling on foot. From my understanding, that would mean that he got into a car.
Okay,
Isn't it interesting when you listen to Seth in his early interviews? Because Seth spoke to one of the handlers of one of the dogs. Now, I don't know whether that was Max's handler or one of the other handlers who told him that they got a scent. And Seth tells a very similar story to what Chris said about the dog handlers and what the dog handlers told him and what he witnessed when he was watching. But it's very interesting that Seth tells a completely different story now. That there's no evidence that Sebastian left the house. Very different story. Like omits any information about the dog tracks. So I'm glad that Vinnie brought up the dispatch audio, even though he was like a drama queen about like, oh, it's, you know, I had to get it off Twitter, blah, blah, blah. But he listened to Seth and Tony say there's no evidence that Sebastian left the house. Then as soon as their interview ended, he brought up the dog track stuff. And now he's got this interview from the Pascal show where Seth talks about the dog track. So I think Vinnie is building up a nice little picture here that actually there is evidence that Sebastian did leave the house. So why is Seth and Tony telling a different story? Now, Vinnie doesn't go on to say, he doesn't question that. He doesn't, it's just implied. The listener might glean that. But I think Vinnie did a good job here of showing both sides. You know, in the absence of Chris and Katie being interviewed as well, I think Vinnie did a decent job of bringing out this information because Seth didn't. Whereas there's actual evidence of Seth saying it, and now he's gone back on it. So I find that very, very interesting.
Let's follow up on that, Dr. Janie Lacey. If he ends up in a car, to me that means he would have been lured out of that house in the middle of the night. What are your thoughts about the prospects of that? Someone like Sebastian, right? He has some special needs. He's a child with autism, being lured by someone.
I heard they're leaning towards saying his shoes were used to leave a scent without him in them, like a law for the dogs. That's what's being implied. I don't think Vinnie's implying that. I don't know who would be implying that, but I don't see that in what Vinnie says or what Vinnie's implying here. But if you use someone else's shoes, I know what you're saying, you walk in someone else's shoes, but what you do is you leave your scent. So the dog, so look, I did a members live last week and it got shut down. Because it was a copyrighted video and blah, blah, blah. But they did this experiment on there with this dog, and the dog was able to discern the scent of like 12 or 15 different people. So they got the scent article from one person, and the dog was able to, you know, hone in on one person's scent. Now, if a dog is being tricked by walking in someone else's shoes, that dog's going to suss that out. That scent is not going to be the scent that they want to follow, in my opinion. Not if you take the shoe in a string and drag it on the ground. Not that I think anyone did it. Oh, yeah, you could do that, yeah. So you could get an item of the clothing and drag it along the ground. You could do that. Wearing their shoes would confuse the dog. But having a scent article, so basically you're laying a trail. Yeah, you could do that. Somebody could have done that. I won't deny that. But I don't think anyone did that. I genuinely don't think anyone did that. Could it be possible someone did that? Yes, absolutely. Would they have done that? Do I think they've done that? No. Or they drag items behind a vehicle, maybe. Yeah, but they couldn't have done that in a vehicle. They couldn't have done it in a vehicle because they'd have had to drive around. They'd have had to drive because the scent went down here through this backyard, then up Kelling. So you're not going to be able to get a vehicle through there because there's like a ditch there. So you're not going to be able to drive a vehicle through there. I mean, if you did, you would see the tracks. You would see the tracks. I assume you would see the tracks anyway. And then you may even see tracks here. Like, I don't know how muddy it was. So I don't think they've driven all the way here to the retention pond. And then what do they do with the item? What did they do with the item then? Because they'd still have the item. So where do they put the item? Because then they'd have to come all the way back. So the dog would follow. It might not. They'd have to walk in their own path. They'd have to walk directly in their own path because the dog would carry on and follow that article back. I don't think that's happened. But if you walk in someone's shoes, yes, you're going to be leaving some scent from their shoes, but it's going to be overwhelmed by your scent. So I don't think somebody wore Sebastian's shoes. That's what I'm saying. But yeah, absolutely, someone could have laid a trail. Do I think they did? No. I think it's way more likely that Sebastian went out on his own and either he had a dreadful accident or he was lured out and someone picked him up. But if someone picked him up, then if someone picked him up at the retention pond, then they'd have had to drive. I don't know whether they could get through to the cemetery and drive out that way, or they'd have had to go this way. And then it's about, would any of these cameras on these houses, if there is cameras on these houses, would any of these cameras picked up a vehicle leaving? And that's obviously a big question mark. Could Sebastian have worn Chris's shoes? Could have done, but then a pair of Chris's shoes would be missing. Like Katie says, there's no shoes missing. I think Sebastian had a pair of shoes. I think he had a pair of shoes that Katie wasn't aware of. That's my opinion. All right, literally, I just want to end this comment. Like they're just going to talk about the possibility of being lured away, and then I'm going to end it because I'm losing my voice, if you can tell.
Perhaps someone from online and bypassing, not telling his mother, not telling his father, and being able to walk out of that house. What do you think it would take to lure Sebastian out of that home?
Well, we would want to consider his normal patterns of behavior, including who he had normal conversations with. Was he playing online, on games and speaking with people he became familiar with? So we would want to look at the familiar patterns for him. And if potentially, as we know, a lot of teenagers do play games online and have online friends. So we would want to investigate and look at who was he regularly talking to or who he encountered, because based off of that information, if he potentially was lured and he got into a vehicle, we would probably want to make some assumptions that there probably was some familiarity, and unless there's some evidence of struggle, which it doesn't sound like there is. So I would be looking at his attachments or his familiar patterns when it comes to people he was commonly communicating with, playing games with, or just potentially who he would consider friends. And a lot of teens consider people they meet online as friends. So that would be a path that we would want to follow.
Yeah, and obviously the cops have checked all that. They've got his tech. So I think they would have been able to glean a lot of information from his tech. What concerns me is that there are some apps that are encrypted, so it's impossible for the cops to be able to see the messages, even, you know, with a search warrant. Telegram being one. WhatsApp apparently is also encrypted. I didn't know that. Someone told me that the other day. So if you're using certain apps to communicate, then the cops wouldn't be able to see those messages. So that concerns me. Again, Sebastian could have literally walked away of his own accord and had a dreadful accident and just be out there somewhere and has been missed by the searchers, like Bryn Hargreaves was missed for 14 months, and then his body was found completely by accident by a couple of hunters. Or, as these guys are implying, he could have been lured away. And it doesn't necessarily mean that he's lured away by someone online. He could have met someone in his local community. Signals also encrypted, yeah. So who knows? But he's still out there. He's still out there over 5 months later. Let's hope that Angel is found safe and sound somewhere. She's left in very similar circumstances in some ways to Sebastian. That, you know, a parent went to bed, thought she was in her room, and in the morning she's just gone. Same age. And it's very, very concerning. So hopefully she's just gone off with someone, she's safe and sound, and she'll come home, or she's found and she's fine. But yeah, so she's now been missing for 5 days. So I'm going to keep a very careful eye on this case. This is a case out of West Virginia. Do I have the Awareness Foundation one still up? Yes, I do. So Angel Turner, she's 15 years old, blonde hair, brown eyes, 5'1", 260 pounds. This is out of Berkeley Springs in Morgan County, West Virginia, but it's very close to the Maryland and Pennsylvania borders. Last seen wearing white t-shirt, black shorts and white sneakers, but she could have changed because that was what her dad saw on the night that he went to bed. So she could have changed. So that's not necessarily what she's wearing now. But if you do have any information about Angel, then call the Morgan County Sheriff's Office on 304-258-0303. And of course, Sebastian, if you've got any credible information about him, you can contact the Sumner County Emergency Communications Centre on 615-451-3838 or the TBI on 1-800-TBI-FIND. So I am going to call it a day. Been on here nearly 3 hours. I don't like staying on that long because I lose my voice, but also they're less watchable for people on the replay. But then again, some people like long lives, so there is that. But I'm going to go now. Cassie needs a wee, so it's time to go. I've got the courttv.com link already in the description box. I'll also put the link to this podcast in the description box as well. It's not there at the moment, but I will put it in. This is Angel Turner's mother, Carrie Michaels, doing an interview on a podcast. So it's available on Spotify, but you can, I assume you can watch it on other podcast providers if you prefer. All right, guys, I am going to go. So thank you all. If you stayed all the way through, then thank you so much. And thank you to the mods, as always. I don't think there's been any trouble in the chat, but thanks as always. Thank you to those that donated. Welcome to all the new members that we got today. And I will see you next time. See you tomorrow. Bye, guys.